John. Turning to Ciaron, as a reporter, I think I have a duty to ask you 3 devil's advocate questions. So the first one is, WikiLeaks informant Chelsea Manning was charged with providing WikiLeaks with a huge dossier on illegal war crimes. Some reporters claim that WikiLeaks did not provide financial support towards Manning's legal costs. Is that claim true?
Just to say, Chelsea, to start by saying Chelsea's in prison now in Alexandria, Virginia, which is the court I was deported from after serving time for disabling a B-52 bomber. It's also where the WikiLeaks grand jury is sitting. At the beginning, I mean, when you talk about the war has been going since 1990, since the sanctions were announced, and I happened to be at the Pentagon that day when Thatcher and George Bush Sr. announced them. And then you had the 2-month drive-by where the US Navy and Air Force dropped the equivalent of 8 Hiroshimas over Iraq. Then the next phase of the war was the sanctions, and that's what destroyed civil society in Iraq. There was nothing left of civil society after those 10 years of sanctions. 1 million children under the age of 5 were killed by those sanctions. Sporadic bombing continued through the 1990s. And then you had the invasion of Iraq. So Chelsea's born just before this war starts. I'll obviously get in prison in the United States. And Julian does his best as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old cyber activist before the World Wide Web in Melbourne. And the film Underground deals with that activism. So when the war begins, Chelsea's about 15 in Wales. The parents are divorced. His mother brings him back to Wales, so proudly at that stage, and speaks out against the war, and then decides to return to live with his father when he's 17, and ends up homeless and encouraged to join the US military. In the meantime, Julian has started WikiLeaks in 2006. The anti-war movement's largely collapsed by that point. And Chelsea is arrested in 2010. And we don't hear Chelsea's voice for about 2 or 3 years after that arrest, when someone secretly smuggles a recording device into the military court at Fort Meade, the NSA base anyway. And that's when we hear a coherent voice, a moral voice, an aware voice. And up to that point, the US propaganda machine has been calling her every name under the sun, you know, and caricaturing her. An opportunity they didn't have with Edward Snowden, who went straight from Hawaii and spoke straight to camera, and they couldn't play those tricks. So initially Chelsea wasn't admitting to being the informant, the whistleblower, and Chelsea made a huge mistake, obviously, you know, by getting into a chat room with Adrian Lamo, who had been a radical hacker who'd been arrested and made a deal with the FBI and was entrapped. So it wasn't really in Chelsea's interest. Even we had to, in a very convoluted way, campaigning for her, say, you know, the accused and whistleblower. So it wasn't in her interest to have WikiLeaks saying, yes, she's the one who was supporting her. And I think this whole accusation of lack of solidarity is also the one that Julian is a narcissist, that he's self-obsessed, which my experience of him is completely wrong. And you know that. The reason you know that is that Edward Snowden is not in chains today. The only reason Edward Snowden's not in chains is because Sarah and Julian rescued Edward Snowden where the Guardian had used him and had left him in Hong Kong. And so I find Julian, and I actually brought the Manning family to meet Julian in the embassy as the first contact the Mannings and the Assanges had, and they were very happy, the Welsh family, with the support WikiLeaks and Julian had given Chelsea.
Claimed that WikiLeaks' release of emails from Hillary Clinton gave the election to Trump. What do you have to say about that? I'd encourage people to read the book Shattered about the Clinton campaign. It was just a terrible candidate, and on top of that, a terribly run campaign. And you should read that book. Also, there's an interview by John Pilger with Julian a couple of days before the election, and John Pilger says, well, who do you prefer to win? And Julian, like the rest of us, said, well, Trump can't win. All of Hollywood is behind Clinton, half the Republican Party behind Clinton. And I don't think Trump thought he could win either. If you watch the footage of the handover from Obama to Trump, he's like, what am I doing here? And which is also Michael Moore's thesis in his recent film,
So WikiLeaks published what was leaked to them. You know, the accusation of the hack, where obviously there's evidence that it was actually leaked and carried out of a building and handed to someone. And it's quite significant because this is where the liberal left in America turns against Julian. And you even have him censored from Democracy Now! They just dropped the issue for a couple of years. They've recently picked it up again. And up to that point, there was intense hostility in England. That's still the case. I think there was general scepticism and support in Australia for Julian, and the same with the liberal left in America. But after the elections, that kind of flipped. So it's a very significant accusation against him. As someone said, Trump was just kind of his own great discreditor. Like he just. And I don't think WikiLeaks held anything back that they had on Trump. Trump just seems to put it all out there.
We all know that the Swedish legal system has released, I should say, withdrawn their prosecution for rape against Julian. What do you make of the matter and its impact on Julian's reputation?
Yeah, I mean, it's significant. Like, I have family members myself, victim of sexual assault. So, you know, when those things came up in 2010, you know, what people fear is guilt by association. And it's also interesting for me that I'm meeting Patrick Maguire, who's one of the Maguire 7, who was 14 years old when the British Special Branch dragged him out of bed and framed him with the bombing of a pub, the Guildford pub, along with his mother, who did 11 years, etc. And people were fearful to go anywhere near that campaign for the Guildford Four. You've probably seen the film In the Name of the Father, deals with that. Yeah. And actually Gareth Peirce, who's played by Emma Thompson, is Julian's lawyer, defendant lawyer. And initially the prosecutor was a woman who defended Pinochet. They kept Pinochet out of jail in Spain. So when I looked at the case, though, and it's also having an Irish background, we're very sceptical of the law. It never didn't ever seriously look like they were going to push it beyond an initial inquiry. Like, they had opportunities to visit London, to interview Julian in London. Julian was quite willing to go to Sweden if they guaranteed no forward extradition, or was quite open to be interviewed. But they just soft-pedaled, treaded water for years and years and years. And I became convinced that it was a holding action. I was also thought it was very dodgy. The first woman and her friend, the policewoman, looked to me like manipulating the second woman, and into an interview at a police station that wasn't recorded, that was immediately leaked to the press. And you know, this recent accusation by the magistrate Abernathy that Julian has to be detained because he has a bad track record at turning up to court. Well, you know, I can tell you he's got a better record than I have at turning up to court. Like, as soon as that came out in the Swedish media, he went straight to a police station, didn't try and do a runner. As soon as, you know, the European arrest warrant became evident in 2010, and it is 9 years yesterday that he was first jailed in England, he went, you know, to a police station. He signed on every day with his bail conditions once he got bail at the High Court. He didn't actually dodge a court appearance, he dodged an airport appearance and went into the embassy, and he would argue triggered a much more significant legal process of seeking asylum. So now, you know, they've dropped the Swedish thing to get that out of the way, so the Americans have a clear run with the espionage charges, and it is, you know, it is a circus. Like, but they've been taping legal meetings in the Ecuadorian Embassy between Julian and Gareth Peirce and others. That's pretty bedrock of American due process, is client-lawyer confidentiality. Well, that's just smashed, you know. So, yeah.
I don't know who should answer the next question, either John or Ciaron, but Amanda Hooton, in a very long article in yesterday's Sydney Morning Herald, explained that the US case against Julian Assange is based on political offences. Political offences are specifically excluded from the British-US extradition treaty. So do you know if this argument will carry any weight in Julian's extradition hearing?
I can have a go, and then John.
Well, the espionage charges itself, its history is during the anti-war movement of World War I and anti-conscription movement in the United States. It was created to target anti-war activists. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of different conflicts, and John, you're probably up to more speed on recent legals.
Yeah.
Well, that's one avenue of the defence against extradition that Julian is using. It may all change radically after the 19th, when Julian is interviewed over the surveillance, all of which is illegal. I could add here that every single one of Julian's human rights has been abrogated again and again. Every single one. Philip Siegel and Greg Barnes wrote a letter to me saying they had never seen a prisoner brought before the court in the condition that Julian was brought, where he could not remember his name and he couldn't remember his birthday. He had been strip searched and hotboxed. I don't know what a hotbox is, but it's something, that's what the prisoners call it, a hotbox, before going into court. Again and again, the distortions of procedure. You hear our leading politicians say due process, and I looked it up, it has a meaning, it has, a legal meaning. It's never happened, never. In 2013, the Swedish prosecutor, Marianne Nye, a singular person has brought the entirety of Sweden into disrepute and completely ruined its reputation for the dispensation of justice. Now it's a country that's only seen as producing junk furniture. Now, no offence to any Swedish people here, just that's what the Swedish prosecutors have caused. 2013, they wanted out. Paul Close, the Crown Prosecuting Service, the UK lawyer, writes saying, "You're not getting cold feet on this, are you? There's more to this than a simple extradition." Again and again, all of this is known to the Australian government. The complicity with the persecution of citizen Julian Assange is just staggering in every direction. 3 countries, on and on at him. Sweden, the United States, and the UK. On and on. Stack of malice and spite, and the complicity of the Australian government involved in it. But I just finish just quickly. Under Malcolm Fraser, Malcolm involved himself and his Foreign Minister Julie Bishop in bringing about the freedom of James Ricketson from an espionage charge in Cambodia. Also, Malcolm, who we were in contact with at the time, sent Julie Bishop to London to speak to the then Minister in charge, Jeremy Hunt. They were evasive, and in the presser afterwards, there are no charges against Julian at the time, never have been actually. Jeremy Hunt said, "This man faces serious charges alongside Julie Bishop." No Australian politician or editorial defended our Foreign Minister against his political embarrassment caused by Jeremy Hunt. A week later, unperturbed, Julie went to Sacramento and met with the Secretary of State Pompeo and asked on the matter of Julian. Pompeo's reply, typical of the man, "We're not interested in speaking about that." I'll leave it at that.
I started this evening with what might have been a personal question. I'm going to end with what also could be a slightly personal question. Ciaron O'Rielly, we've heard you many times on Bay FM's Community Newsroom. Can you hear me, Ciaron?
Yep.
Yep. We've heard you many times talk about how helpful it was for you to receive correspondence from strangers even while you were in jail in overseas countries. But really, of all the things that we may or may not be able to do to help Julian Assange, how helpful really is it to write him a letter?
Yeah, I think what you've seen is a 9-year methodic, conscious attack on Julian's physical and mental health, and that's obviously escalated with his isolation in Belmarsh Prison now. In my case, they put me on Con Air in upstate New York after I was sentenced and flew me through Oklahoma to the Mexican border, and they put me in a prison where I was the only gringo, the only white boy, and there were 24 of us in a cage, and 6 cages welded together in one room. So the kind of opposite problem with Julian, had too many people to communicate with. And I was experiencing low-level assault for the first month, and my mental health wasn't great. And what literally saved me was the amount of correspondence. Once that started coming in, I got really popular with Mexican stamp collectors, and kind of built my base from there. And and I was playing soccer, and I was in the only African team in the jail, and also ended up writing letters to people's lawyers and girlfriends in English, and that made me quite popular too. So you can't underestimate it, because the whole system is there to say you're forgotten, you're isolated, give up, recant. And I've been with Julian in the embassy when he's opened letters and seen him nourished by that, as anyone would be. And especially that you're from a place where he grew up in northern New South Wales, part of his childhood. That's a connection you have when you write to him and stuff like that. And it also sends a very clear message to the staff. You know, the bullying from the staff in Texas dropped immediately. The correspondence started coming in. They just, you know, unfortunately they backed off and picked on someone else. But it made it a lot, it sends a message that he isn't forgotten, there is support, he has reach on the outside, and that's very important in jail.